The 183rd edition of the Roy's Boys podcast starts right now.
Carolina basketball family is the strongest there's ever been. There ever will be.
Nate Humphrey King likes the ball. Pushes into Hubert Davis. 8 seconds. Davis trying to get free. Over to Fox. Fox, baseline. Up for the shot. Good. Off the glass. Oklahoma calls timeout. But the game is over. The game is over. Carolina has upset number 1 Oklahoma. Been ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered by Minnie.
With 20 seconds left to play, goes back to Michael Jordan. Jumper from out on the left. Good! 63, 62, 13, 12, 11. Georgetown with one timeout. Brent Brown looking. Throw away to Worthy. 35. The Tar Heels are going to win the national championship. Carolina with foul. He takes the timeout. Technical foul. Technical foul.
Brown gets it into Williams. Here comes Williams front court. Williams on the drive. Gets it back out the head. Long outside shot. Short rebound. It's over. And how about the Tar Heels? They are the national champions.
The Tar Heels are the national dadgum champions.
And that's what it takes when you big time games. You got to compete. You do it with your brain, and you got to do it with your heart too. And that's pretty doggone good.
From QCBroadcasting.com, this is the Roy's Boys podcast with your host, Josh Marlowe. Hey, Ray, welcome to another edition of the Roy's Boys podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services. Josh Anthony coming to you tonight with Anthony on the phone. I'm sitting in my dad's basement as we're going to break down Carolina's 82-62 win over Northeastern on Wednesday night and look ahead to tomorrow's all-important home matchup with the Louisville Cardinals. And, buddy, let's go back to Wednesday night. Carolina was able to squeeze in a game with the aforementioned Northeastern Huskies from the Colonial Athletic Association and scored a 82-62 win. It wasn't a great game by any means from Carolina. They only shot 43% from the field, 29% from three, but I really left that game, really that second half, encouraged from what I saw from this team. I've mentioned it really all year long when the COVID issues started coming up around other teams in the program that Carolina, they just need to play games so they can get better. You can't always expect to improve in practice. I thought Carolina got a lot better in the second half on Wednesday night.
Yeah, I think it was exactly what we were expecting when they scheduled that game. It's a chance to sort of get themselves in a little bit of a rhythm. Granted, it didn't come against an ACC opponent. It probably didn't come against a team that you'll see in the NCAA tournament. You just really don't know with the conference that they're in. They have a chance, but right now they're not in first place in that conference, and you'll just have to kind of wait and see. But, I think that they – early on in the game, you could tell that they, were a little thrown off by the fact that this was on such short notice. Again, this is coming in. They knew that this was a chance to come out and put up a big win over a team that they knew they were more talented than. I think maybe that got to them a little bit early. They had a few turnovers that were a little head-scratching. But after that, I thought they definitely settled in that second half. You saw some guys that normally aren't contributing as much here down the stretch contribute a little bit more. I felt like it was a good win for them to get themselves prepared for what is going to be a big game against Louisville on Saturday. So, I thought that, it was you take what you can from the game, and I think Carolina did exactly that. I know you probably thought it was a little bit bigger of a win than I probably did.
Yeah, as I mentioned, Carolina just needs to play to get better. And I feel like that's what, we've been looking at the last couple of weeks. It's been really hard to gauge, has this team gotten better, because you had an ugly loss at Clemson, a big win at Duke, and then a ugly loss again at Virginia. So it's been hard to really gauge, the progress this team has made in the last 2 to 3 weeks, because just frankly, they haven't been on the court enough right now to kind of justify that. Back at the end of January, you could tell that this team is getting better because you saw them 2 times a week, and you could see that they were making progress. That progress has been stalled due to COVID issues, both within our program and then, of course, with the outside programs. But some things I liked the other night, you mentioned the turnovers. At the under 12 mark in the first half, they had 7. They finished the game with 10. So they took better care of the basketball the last 30 minutes or so. They had a height advantage on the inside, so they dominated the rebounds 48-33. They grabbed 17 offensive rebounds to turn those into 18 second chance points. They dominated points in the paint 42-22. Free throws. Remember, at Virginia, they shot 6 of 12 from the foul line. Wednesday night, 13 of 16, 81%. That's a healthy number. You'd love to see this team shoot that more often. And then the bench points. Carolina was fueled by Day'Ron Sharp's 15 points and 8 rebounds off the bench. Walker Kessler gave you 10 and 7, including banking in a three-pointer. But overall, the bench outscored Northeastern's 40-12. And then you got to talk about what really allowed Carolina to really gain separation in the second half, because this game was relatively close in the first half. They took away Tyson Walker in the second half. He scored 21 in the first 20 minutes. There was talk that he was going to break the Smith Center scoring record, that he got held in check with just 6 points in the second half. But I want to go back to Walker Kessler here for a second. This is a guy that a few weeks ago I belittled, I berated, and claimed I don't want to see him on the court for the rest of the season. He has quietly become a part of this team's rotation again in a way that I don't think even he expected to become. The other night, 7'1", he was the biggest player on the floor, and he had a possession where he was involved in every play for about a minute, whether it was taking the shot, rebounding the shot, getting fouled, whatever. He was everywhere. What stood out to you from Walker Kessler's big game the other night?
Well, I think, you've seen that he has become a bigger part of what Carolina has done here, which was sort of expected in the last 2 games after what happened with the COVID issues, the parties that were revealed. So, I think you're starting to see some of what we expected from him coming in. Now, again, I think that the main reason why he struggled this year is because, frankly, he's just undersized. I mean, look, most people, I think, when they first looked at him, the number that they saw was he's 7 foot. Okay, well, he's 7 foot, but he's got a small frame. He's still going to have to put the weight on, but you're seeing that there is some talent here. Once he adds that weight, this is going to be a really, really good basketball player. I mean, it was nice to see him hit that three. Now, granted, he had to bank it in, but at the least, he's showing you that the range is there. If he can get his shot going, he could be a guy that can help stretch the floor, which was what we thought we could see from him. So there is a lot to be encouraged about with him, and you really got to hand it to him with the fact that he just stuck with it, because it would have been really easy for him to just say, forget it, look, I don't have a role on this team this year. It's not really worth trying to push myself for minutes because they're not really going to need me. But he kept himself ready. When he got the call, he stepped up, and he had a big game. Most people will say, well, guess what? It's against Northeastern. How great of a performance actually is it? But you can see that this young man is starting to take some big steps and is really showing that if he's needed down the stretch for the rest of the season, Carolina can count.
Yeah, and I feel like they're going to need him in certain spots to make plays. We saw it again the other night where Garrison Brooks, even though he had 11 points, 13 rebounds, he was willingly benched for Walker Kessler at certain times in the game because Brooks, quite frankly, wasn't playing smart, and he sure as heck wasn't playing tough. And I think that drew the ire of Roy Williams, because you hate seeing a veteran big man play as soft as he played the other night. And so I do think there's going to be games moving forward in ACC play where Kessler is going to be called upon to deliver, and I feel like he's more comfortable making certain plays, or at least he'll get on the floor for a loose ball. Got to talk about Caleb Love. We entered the game talking about how we felt like he needed to have a big game in terms of scoring the ball. And while he didn't, only 6 points, 2 of 8 from the field, 0 of 4 from behind the three-point line, He had a career-high 9 assists, and that's the most assists by a freshman since Marcus Page had 10 in the ACC tournament quarterfinals against Florida State. If you go back to that game when Page had those 10 assists, he said in the postgame he felt like in mid-February was when he was really figuring out how to play point guard for North Carolina and, more importantly, for Roy Williams. You look at the calendar, it is now February 19th, so the middle of February, and we've seen glimpses of Caleb Love putting together in terms of scoring the ball. He had, of course, the big game at Duke, but the 9 assists, that's something that we haven't seen from him this year. His previous career high was 7. I thought in the second half of that game, Carolina ran as well as they've ran all year minus the Duke game, because I think we can both agree at Duke, their tempo was the best we've seen from them all year long. But I thought the other night in the second half, they wore down Northeastern with their tempo, and it started with Caleb Love pushing the ball up the floor and getting the ball to his teammates for easy buckets. What should we take away from his performance? Because even though he didn't score the ball a lot, he was helping his teammates out as a facilitator.
Yeah, I thought, I think the biggest thing to take away from this game from him is that he is really starting to settle in. He's starting to realize that, especially in a game like this, they don't need him to take over. I think he figured out pretty much early on that it wasn't really his night from the field, and really started looking for everybody else who was playing pretty well. But I think, you look at the fact that he had 9 assists, only 2 turnovers. So while a lot of the other guys on the team were struggling with turnovers, he only had 2. That was one of the big things. We saw it against Duke, performed really well in that game, scored a lot, and really had us feeling good. But Roy Williams pointed out in the postgame, and it probably went a little unnoticed during the game because of how well he played. At times on the offensive end, he had 5 turnovers. So to see him cut that down, to see him spreading the ball around like he was. And then another thing that I think will catch some people off guard, he had 3 steals in this game. So he was doing it on the defensive end too, and that's what you're looking for. We've seen that at times this year where he has become really active on the defensive end for stretches of the game. If they can get that effort consistently from him on the defensive end, and he can continue to grow as an offensive player, both passing the basketball and shooting the basketball, you have to really like what this guy could eventually become, the prospects of what he could eventually become. I think this is the biggest stat to show how good he played the other night. A lot of guys have really good nights off the bench for Carolina, but of the starters in this game for Carolina, he had the best plus-minus at +10 in this game. So it just shows that he really, if he's having success, this team is having success. They need him to continue to play well in games down the stretch against Louisville, Florida State if you want to pull the upset, and Syracuse, as well as that big game against Duke. And I think right now you're in a position where you're pretty confident that you've got a point guard that's starting to figure stuff out.
Yeah, and that's a good thing because as good as Carolina is on the interior and their post players, I've said all year long they've got the best and most talented front court in college basketball. You want to win big games come March, it's going to start with backcourt play. And a few other nuggets before we move on to our next topic. Kerwin Walton had a nice game, 14 points, 5 of 10 shooting from the field, 3 of 7 from behind the three-point line. He is shooting north of 40% from behind the arc this season. Andrew Platek, another guy off the bench who had a great game as well, 9 points, 4 of 5 shooting at all the little things you love to see a guy like Andrew Platek do to help your team win. One thing that came out of this game was because the fact it was put together last second, you had a random broadcasting crew which allowed Tyler Hansborough, believe it or not, the former Tar Heel All-American national champion, and in our opinions, the best North Carolina college basketball player of all time, meaning that he's the best to ever play for the Tar Heels in college. He was on the call for the game. It was his first ever broadcast. I left the game with a little bit more to be desired. I mentioned in our Heel Tough Law group chat that I really missed Corey Alexander calling our game the other night because of the kind of dry sense or the dry commentary we got from Hansborough. But one thing he did that was really funny was he clowned Walker Kessler's haircut, which at first I didn't realize it was as bad as it is. But I've got bad hair, but my hair is not as bad as Walker Kessler's. What were your impressions of Hansborough's first night behind the mic?
Well, first of all, my hair is as bad as Walker Kessler's most days. That's why I wear a lot of hats, and it's mainly because I just really don't care what my hair looks like because I'm trying to get out and go do my thing. I probably won't walk